The first season of The Gilded Age, which many of you might be hearing about for the first time today, which is a real shame because I love the show. But anyway, The Gilded Age is Julian Fellowes' long-awaited American version of Downton Abbey. You would think it would be a bigger deal, but it did. The first season only get moderate responses from critics and audiences. But apparently it did well enough for a season 2 renewal. Or maybe that's more of a vote of confidence in Julian Fellowes. How do you not renew Julian Fellowes for a season 2? Originally, it aired on Monday nights, the time slot where Chernobyl and Craig Mazin made quite an impression. Mazin went on to spearhead The Last of Us, also, of course, for HBO. So you could do some damage on Monday nights, but The Gilded Age, not so much. But this season, perhaps due to the strike and lack of content, or again, maybe as a favor to Fellowes to give his show the best chance possible to succeed before maybe tragically canceling it, I hope it gets a season 3. They set up such an amazing season 3. But don't worry, season 2 is also fantastic. It's not one of those things where it's like, oh, we're going to spend all this time hoping we get another season. But The Gilded Age, season 2 is going to get the HBO coveted Sunday 9 p.m. time slot. Ooh, I hope it does well there. I'm real nervous. Downton Abbey, by the way, also used to air on Sunday nights on PBS. Remember PBS? Whatever happened to PBS? You can now stream Downton Abbey, by the way, I checked, on Prime Video. Did streaming kill PBS, which used to be the only way for Americans to get British TV? That would be real sad if that were the case. But why doesn't PBS fight harder? All right, so back to The Gilded Age. As I said, I adored season 1. I thought it was so good. As a New Yorker, I get a kick out of seeing my city in the late 1880s compared to today. And I also am a fan of history overall. The Gilded Age is much more interested in history than Downton Abbey ever was. I mean, Downton Abbey, of course, touched on some historical events, but those people were kind of tucked away on the estate, whereas, here, they're in the middle of New York City. Stuff's happening. And I also grew up loving the historical American Girl dolls, especially their books. I actually didn't like the dolls that much, but I thought their books were fantastic. And The Gilded Age, to me, plays like American Girl for adults, especially this season. Oh, this season is very adult, where the show has gotten a bit more, let's say, dramatic. And then, although when you think back, because I was like, whoa, this is getting a little dramatic, this is getting a little spicy. But then I was like, oh yeah, the earlier seasons of Downton Abbey were that way as well. So perhaps being a bit more spicy and saucy, all the condiments will help with viewership. I sure hope so. I love this show. I thought the first few episodes, though, to be fair, of season 2 were a little rough around the edges as the show regained its footing, trying to balance the new added drama. And also Peggy, a crucial character to this show's, again, balancing act, is saddled with a very depressing storyline carried over from season 1, dealing with the loss of her baby. It's complicated. Her baby was given up for adoption by her father. She's real sad about it because the baby died. It was a very moving, emotional storyline, but it was also like, it kind of took Peggy out of the fun for the first few episodes. But then around episode 3 or 4, everything clicked. Whew! And the show became, in my opinion, better than ever. I was like, this is such a good show. I feel awful that nobody watches it. So juicy, so much history. Phenomenal. I found the entire journey of season 2 to be extremely satisfying. So I'm going to watch it again because I have family members who like this show. So I'm like, I'll watch it again with you. I can't wait to experience it again. So I urge you to take this journey as well, even if the first 2 episodes, again, are a little bumpy. By the time you get to episode 8, I think you'll be so glad you invested the time. You could maybe wait to binge it, but I don't know. Are you really going to remember? I mean, it's Sunday nights. It's a HBO ritual at this point. It wouldn't kill you to at least try The Gilded Age. I just love this show. Now, to me, one of the most interesting things about season 2 is that the first season did a little bit, but this season particularly highlights how fluid the class system is in America versus, say, the UK, where, of course, Downton Abbey took place. Like there, a servant at Downton Abbey could never hope to transition upstairs except if they married into the family, which of course was the storyline on Downton Abbey. But in the Gilded Age, more than one servant makes the jump in season 2. There is one development in particular towards the end of season 2 that I was like, that is such a good idea. Oh my goodness. And it sets up a very exciting season 3, which again, I hope will be greenlit. And as I said, I think they do a fantastic job of setting up season 3 overall. I'm like, wow, there's so much good stuff in season 2, and it looks like they're just gonna keep elevating the show with season 3, but I just don't know if they're gonna get there. You know, it's interesting. Sally Richardson Whitfield, the voice of Elisa Mazza from Gargoyles, is a director and producer on this show, and she was also a director and a producer on Winning Time, another fantastic show. Also, interestingly, kind of like a historical period piece, but in a very different way. But that show struggled a little bit, but HBO, I feel, mercilessly cut it down in its prime. I think both shows should at least get 3 seasons. I mean, come on, after they set up the season 3 for Gilded Age, how can you not do it? Historically, there is some great stuff going on this season. The Battle of the Opera Houses is surprisingly fun, especially because they keep talking about this new opera house, the Metropolitan Opera, which of course still exists to this day. In fact, I was just there in June. I had a great time. There's also a storyline about dealing with the emergence of unions, which I think is also very timely even today. And the building of the Brooklyn Bridge, where I learned some really interesting stuff. And I don't want to spoil it for you, and I was like, is that true? And I Googled it, and it is true. And so I'm so happy that this show brought that out into the open. And once again, Peggy Scott's storyline shines an important spotlight, not just on Black history in America, but the Black upper class that is so often tragically ignored by history books. After her somber storyline is resolved after the first few episodes, Peggy goes back to being a spunky journalist. I love this. And for instance, this season, they covered the expansion of Tuskegee University. These scenes were fantastic. And also, at the same time, though, the continued horrors for the Black community in the South at that time. They didn't shy away from that, which I thought was important. As well as the trouble faced by New York City public schools for Black students at the time, and the solution they came up with, which again, it's true, looked it up, checked it. I thought this was fascinating, and it was so interesting to learn this. It particularly interested me after having seen The Knick a couple of years back, another fantastic show, which nobody watched. But, you know, that also, you know, I don't want to ruin it, but, you know, they kind of like worked in tandem, and I thought that was really interesting. I was a little disappointed on how Peggy's story ended for the season. I was like, Peggy, say it ain't so. All I'll say here, again, I don't want to spoil it, is that workplace romances were as big a problem back then as they are today. And I felt bad for Peggy. I was like, Peggy, I wouldn't have done that. All right, so there's a lot to talk about. It's very juicy. The cast of this show continues to be top-notch, with duos Carrie Coon and Morgan Spector and Christine Baranski and Cynthia Nixon across the street on 61st Street. That's so funny. 5th Avenue and 61st Street. You know, I'm sure many of you, if you're in New York, you're around there sometimes, and that's where these characters are living on this show. But these two pairs continue to lead the charge on this show. They're fantastic. And like the first season, a lot of Broadway actors are brought in and for supporting roles, and of course do fantastic work. Donna Murphy, so good, and Audra McDonald, they both have excellent storylines this season and do a great job. Their roles are in fact larger than they were last season. And the always excellent Laura Benanti, I'm such a fan of hers. She joins the fun for a few episodes as well. And then Robert Sean Leonard from House, remember him? He also joins season 2 and is a very welcome addition. As for the rest of the cast, Danae Benton, of course, is wonderful as Peggy, and Taissa Farmiga from the Nun movies, right? And Vera Farmiga's younger sister, she gets a lot more to do this season and really meets the challenge. She's fantastic. Blake Ritson, he is also given plenty to do as Baranski's closeted gay son, you know, which is a very complicated situation at that time. And he has a particularly shocking storyline this season, but not for the reasons that you might think. The show is very respectful to his situation. What his character does towards the end of this season, I thought that's what was happening, and I was like, oh my goodness. And then the dramatic writing was so well done, and Ritson's performance They just really made it compelling and brought it home. And I was like, that's good stuff. Oh, that was juicy. Everyone really does a great job in the cast. It's a wonderful ensemble, upstairs and downstairs. Except for Louisa Jacobson, who, by the way, is Meryl Streep's daughter. She is super bland still. And what was originally supposed to be the Lady Mary of this show. She is no Lady Mary. Thankfully, The Gilded Age Season 2 is now more of an ensemble show, so Jacobson's blandness isn't so bad, especially because they create plenty of drama around her to distract. And she does have incredible fashions. She wears a pink and yellow and white number. Like the first episode is for Easter, and she has this pink, yellow, and white dress on, and I was like, that is nice. That is very nice. It's very, again, American Girl dolls, playing with paper cutouts, if you've ever done that. It's fun. So I'm not quite sure why The Gilded Age hasn't caught on like Downton Abbey. Part of me feels it's because while the Grantham family was royalty, they were actually only moderately well off financially speaking. But here, as was the situation at the time in real life, you're seeing tremendous wealth on display, grossly on display. And understandably, that might rub some people the wrong way, which is why I'm so glad that they're putting more of an emphasis on downstairs characters being in flux. And that you can join those ranks even if you start out downstairs. And I hope that will maybe widen the appeal of the show. I mean, it could be too late, but I hope not. I hope people tune in. So I loved The Gilded Age Season 1, and I love Season 2 even more. I think it's such a fantastic show. It starts this Sunday on HBO and Max, and I hope that you'll check it out. I'm curious, did any of you see Season 1? What do you think of the show? Do you think you might give Season 2 a whirl? It's really quiet right now. It's Sunday nights, just one episode at a time. That's not too much of a commitment, right? Share your thoughts down below. Because, by the way, everybody came out in favor of Winning Time only once it was canceled. Suddenly everybody was like, no! And you're like, where were you when nobody was watching this show? So I wonder if that's the same case for The Gilded Age. I just think it's phenomenal. All right, so share your own thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.